Good day everyone, my name is Camjack and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing another Spaces development sort of talk. Now it's been a couple of weeks since the public test, or about 2 to be honest, and I thought I'd come back and talk about it a little bit more, but more specifically cover the latest news that there is going to be another public Space Engineers test for the major overhaul of survival. Also, Marke, the lead person behind Spaces, has dropped a bunch of details on what they thought on community feedback and how this test will be slightly different than the one we have previously experienced. So let's get straight into it. So for those who you know, the public test ran on the 17th of January 2019. We're on the 30th now, just for clarification. And that basically introduced us to the new blocks which would be a part of a major overhaul of survival, as well as some different gameplay features such as progression, some new spawning features, especially in SC Survival, and a couple of faction changes as well. Kind of, some quality of life stuff was thrown in as well. Overall, this was our first glimpse of what will be in the major update coming later this year at some point. We still don't have a date for it just yet. But hey ho, we definitely know what's going to be in the major update. So following that, we obviously could give our community feedback to developers. I filled out the forms, I'm hoping some of you did as well. You left comments on social media, in my comment section, in the SC section, you all got your feedback in at least once. And I'm glad you guys can give feedback to me in the comments as well. I try and pass along to the developers what you give to me, so it does help when you do comment on these videos, as I know some of the developers do watch these videos sometimes, which is good. Anyway, let's get into Marke's blog post, which is what we're going to do now. So, release today, January the 30th, Marke goes, reflection on the first public test of the major overhaul of survival. Basically saying, we kicked off the public test of our community. You can see the other blog post, which we did read through, and the first public test was around on the 17th of January. Basically, he wants to reflect back on the first test, what the community thought of it, and what the developers themselves learned from it and responded to. He makes mention over 1,000 responses were from the community, that's you guys, during the first test. Now that is taking into consideration that the test only ran for 24 hours, which is great to hear. Just to build a little bit on that, the next test, which starts tomorrow, January 31st at 10 AM UTC, will actually last until Monday the 4th of February, which is great news. As some of you previously said to me, Jack, we couldn't log in, it was on a Thursday, a bit inconvenient, some of us have work. So I totally understand and get you. I also didn't get a chance to test it properly last week because I had recordings and other commitments myself. Well, luckily the developers have listened to us and this test will be longer. Starting on Thursday, January 31st at 10 AM UTC, going all the way over the weekend until Monday. So you've got plenty of time to sit down and properly test this version of Spaces and give your feedback to the developers. And I strongly advise you do give that feedback, as it is super important. I gave mine and I know some of you gave yours, and yeah, if you have any other thoughts on it, comment down below. Marke makes mention that it's a great high number to see how many people respond to that, and the development team has reviewed the feedback and made several important changes. I'm going to go over the important changes they've made, which are available in tomorrow's public test. Starting with progression. Obviously progression was something they introduced in the survival update. A little bit controversial, some people liked the idea of it, some people didn't. I'm in the middle on the fence, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not entirely sure I want to turn it on my servers, and at the same time, I kind of do. Anyway, let's see what they changed. So it says we've added shared progression in the faction, so it's more user-friendly and easy to understand. Now I think this means that if you're in a faction of 8 players, for example, the progression is going to be shared between the whole faction and the players in it. This is great news, as one of the questions I raised to the developers in my feedback was that if I'm in a faction of my friends, which I commonly am in series like Colony Wars, am I going to be at the lower end of the spectrum while one friend is running off with jump drives? This seems like they've responded to this, and if it works in the way I think it'll work, it's going to be great news, so we'll have to test that tomorrow. They've also mentioned that the general progression tree has been improved, no other comment on this, but the new progression UI has been put into the game. This is a bit of feedback I gave as well, and the fact the UI for progression was a bit bland and boring, to be honest. I'm going to be completely honest there, I wasn't entirely impressed over the UI progression. When I first mentioned or heard mention of progression, I thought, oh, we're going to get something like a tech tree, a cool new menu to open up where we're going to see what the process is working down. No, it just was the G menu shaded out. I wasn't entirely impressed with that, but hey ho, it now looks like we're getting a new UI being put into the game. So I am excited to see that. Don't worry if you can't get into the test over the weekend, I am going to be covering the changes on the channel tomorrow, Thursday, January 31st, so keep an eye out for that. The spawn system toggle for new features has been added into the world settings, which is great news as I know some people did not want to play with them. I know when I come round to hosting new servers, after this update we're probably going to have 2 servers with progression turned on and 2 with it turned off, just so people can, make a choice of what they want to play. Now they've made some changes to the anti-griefing. This includes putting the rifle and 3x magazines to all drop pod cargoes, updating the weapon shot distance, removing random distance and making better guns shoot on better range. This is great news, as hopefully it's going to improve some things. Hopefully they've not totally ruined the removing sort of random distance away, but it should add a bit more structured gameplay to the game overall. Let me know what you think of that down below. Just before I forget, they have rebalanced the hydrogen engine and have increased the internal hydrogen capacity. This is great news, as I know there's quite a lot of feedback around the hydrogen engine. Personally myself, I'm not entirely fussed over the block, but I know there is some discussion and change going into it. I should have a bit more conversation about the hydrogen engine soon, I just need to dig into it a little bit more. Now, this is something really cool. They've reintroduced the ragdoll for the astronaut. Quite interesting. The ragdoll went away quite a long time ago, I believe, but now it's back in there. Going to be interesting to see how well that performs. They've also reworked cargo and encounter PCs having its own pool and set up in the world settings. Great news. They've also worked on the survival overbalance, or the overall survival balance, and rebalanced it. Great news for that. And they've also added one of my most requested features, which seems like it comes from Torch, is the new voxel trash removal tool for admins. I'm not sure how entirely this will work, but if it goes off other programs like Torch, then I believe it will reset voxels in the world. I'm not entirely sure, but we're going to have to see how well it actually goes. Hopefully this will allow us to maintain server sim speed a little bit longer, as even with the multiplayer update, servers do degrade quite fast when you've got, 16 to 32 players playing on them. So hopefully this is going to help us fix it a little bit longer. Now they've also unified functional colours for all blocks, powered, not powered, etc. So hopefully a bit more distinction there for new players into the game. Now, just in case you didn't catch it earlier, the second test is planned to start on January 31st, 2019 at 10 AM UTC. They're extending the testing window until Monday, the February 4th, which is great news, so you've got plenty of time to enjoy it. Now, Marke does mention that the main reason for running these public tests is so they can get feedback for the game. I definitely agree with Marke there. Your feedback is what changes this game for the better, so if you've got an opinion on it and you don't feel something's quite right, or you want us to give some constructive feedback, or any feedback for that matter, give it to the developers. If you're playing the test, make sure to fill out the forms. If you don't get the chance to play it, leave a comment down below on this video and comment it on SC's social media. I'll make sure to try and pass it on to developers, and I'm sure they'll see it if you are tweeting and Facebooking them. It's going to be quite cool. I'll be checking out a public test. I'm kind of excited for these changes, especially a few in there which have caught my eye, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, I've been Captain Jack. Thank you for watching this update, and I'll see you tomorrow with the Space Aliens public test. Goodbye.